Reclaiming Minnesota, An Alternate History of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862 by Colin Mustful. Author's Note. In August of 1862, war erupted in the state of Minnesota. Commonly known as the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862, the war was brief, but its results were tragic and long-lasting, perhaps everlasting. During the war, which started August 18th and ended September 23rd, an estimated 400 to 800 white Euro-American settlers lost their lives, while more than 70 United States soldiers were killed. For the Dakota, the indigenous population native to Minnesota, an estimated 75 to 150 soldiers were killed during the war, while 38 men were executed by hanging in Mankato, Minnesota on December 26, 1862. Another 2 were later hanged at Fort Snelling on November 11, 1865. Additionally, several hundred Dakota were imprisoned while about 1,700 were interned at Fort Snelling and later exiled to Crow Creek, South Dakota. In each case, conditions for the Dakota were poor, and several hundred died from disease and starvation. But this book is not an attempt to quantify the U.S.-Dakota War and its aftermath. Neither is it an assessment of the actions of those involved or an attempt to clarify or interpret those actions. This is not a direct attempt at reconciliation. Rather, as someone who has spent years researching and writing about Minnesota's complicated and often heinous past, I want to take a new look at the past, not as history, but as it exists today. History is intertwined with the present in such an inextricable way that the two cannot be separated. What happened in the past has a direct and meaningful impact on everything we do, see, and think as time moves forward. This, of course, is obvious, but can be easily overlooked. We study history in the past tense, viewing people and events as a segment of time rather than an unbroken string that links our present moment with the people and events that have come before us. I was born in Minneapolis and have spent most of my life in the state of Minnesota. I enjoy all of the benefits of a wealthy, modern, abundant, and privileged society while also enjoying access to the peace and recreation of a vast and beautiful landscape of lakes, forests, rivers, hills, and prairies. On any given day, I can use the land to hike, climb, fish, swim, run, bike, camp, canoe, kayak, hunt, ski, or make use of it in any other way. I also benefit from the abundance of its resources and everything the land produces, such as food, water, timber, iron, coal, energy, limestone, and so on. It is a place of remarkable beauty and abundance. Acknowledgement of the past and the impacts it has on the world today is a good place to start. But to truly understand history, we must move beyond acknowledgement and toward empathy. That's why I've written this book. It is my attempt, through the creativity and power of fiction, to create a direct link to the past, one that engenders empathy rather than just acknowledgement. There are no shortages of facts surrounding the history of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862 or the Sandy Lake tragedy, both of which are covered in previous novels of mine. I've learned the facts as they are presented, and I cannot change what happened, but I can change the way I perceive it. What if my family was forced to move from the land we lived upon for generations? What if my family was stripped of its language, history, and culture? What if my family was executed for trying to survive? What if my family was imprisoned, maltreated, and exiled, placed aboard steamships and sent away to a small, inhospitable reservation on arid, rocky ground? As a white American, I will never fully comprehend the loss, grief, and historical trauma of Native populations in this country. I can try to understand and acknowledge the realities of the past and what it means for Native peoples today, but I cannot bring myself to a place of parallelism with the Native experience. What I've learned through research and writing is right and good and leads to understanding, but it does not bring us all the way to empathy. That requires more effort. This story is an alternate history of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. It relies on real people, events, and settings, but it does not represent the facts. It is not meant as an indictment on any one person or group of people. It is a way to connect the past with the present by showing readers what the world might look like if the events of the past happened a little differently. It is meant to bring out the humanity in all of us, to enlighten us on all we've gained, all we've lost, and why we must make things right. A note on language, sources, and appropriation. I identify as a white male who grew up in a suburban setting in the 1980s and 1990s. What I create through fiction is, inevitably, an expression of my own experience and viewpoint. I've relied on my professional and educational backgrounds to create, to the best of my ability, a meaningful and important story. While I've worked hard to represent history and culture in an accurate and respectful manner, I acknowledge that there may be shortcomings or errors in my representation. Furthermore, I do not claim ownership or authority over the people, places, history, or culture shared in this fictional representation of the world. I encourage readers to seek out more sources and perspectives, especially those from Native peoples, about this history. Regarding Native history and culture, I relied heavily on the book titled Chippewa Customs by Francis Densmore. I've also relied on a variety of other sources, such as Ojibwe Wasa in Abida by Thomas Peacock and Marlene Wisuri, History of the Ojibwe People by William W. Warren, and various other print, digital, and online sources. Regarding language, I've relied upon a variety of online sources such as the Ojibwe People's Dictionary, Ojibwe.net, and the Great Lakes Indian, Fish, and Wildlife Commission's language poster. I do not speak Ojibwe Muin or Dakota, and there remains much I do not understand about the tradition and complexities of these languages. However, I decided to include both the Ojibwe Muin and Dakota languages in this novel to create a sense of veracity and to show support for the current growth and revitalization of these languages. Finally, I am indebted to Michael A. Loso for his help to correct and verify elements of Native representation in this novel. Any mistakes that remain are my own.